Good morning. I have my mug. I have my Perot mug. I get to use this because I'm reading an Agatha Christie right now. I'm Melinda, and this is a Web of Stories, and I am here with my weekly wrap-up. So, we are in the Christmas season. I've done one bit of Christmas baking. I'm organizing a Christmas cookie exchange for my church, and I want to try some new cookie recipes. So I found one, I think it was from like last year's Food Network magazine, but it's cookie butter chocolate chip cookies. I made those yesterday, which meant that cookie butter is a thing that came into my life. Cookie butter no longer needs to be in my house because that stuff is good. That and Nutella, I think they can't be in my house. They are good. And the cookies were good. I actually wish it had more of a cookie butter taste. My kids really liked them. I let them each have one. And I put the rest away and I counted how many were in the container so I know if they steal any. But I have like 4 or 5 more cookie recipes I want to try. And if nothing really strikes my fancy, I have some old favorites I can always go to. I will have to, so the cookie exchange is a week from Sunday. So when you see this on the day drops, a week from tomorrow. The night before, the Girl Scouts are coming over and they decided that they wanted to decorate cookies, which is not a surprise. They always want to decorate cookies. So I'm going to have to make up some cookies for them to decorate. But they also want to do some crafts. One is they're going to paint some ornaments. And the other is they're going to take like white pillar candles and then light little colored votive candles and then use the wax from that to paint. So please keep me in your prayers that my house doesn't burn down while they do this because I'm a little scared. But that's what they decided they wanted to do, so we're gonna do it. There's gonna be more cooking in my life this coming week, more baking. I'm still trying to decide what to have for Christmas dinner. I don't know if I shared this before, but when my kids were little, I grew up always having like several Christmas dinners because my mother had to have it for every part of the family. But when my kids were little, like old enough to play with toys, so toddlers, I decided I didn't want to do Christmas dinner anymore because that meant I had to excuse myself from the holiday. I make this dinner that no one really wanted because all the kids just want to play with their toys. So I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to do it anymore. We just did Christmas brunch. It worked great. My parents were horribly scandalized that I would not do Christmas dinner. And so for the first couple years that I didn't do Christmas dinner, they would send me Omaha steaks so that we wouldn't starve. And like, trust me, we're not going to starve. There's food. It's just not set out. But the kids are older now. And so I'm going to do Christmas dinner. I've invited my friends over. One of whom was the one who's in the hospital. So I'm hoping she can make it. She's having, some nausea issues from her treatment, which is to be expected, unfortunately. But I'm still trying to decide what to make. Now, a lot of people say just do Thanksgiving again, which I could do. But turkey's it is labor intensive the day of. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a rib roast. My husband and I are kind of talking about it. So let me know in the comments if you do a Christmas dinner, what you normally do for Christmas dinner, because I need some inspiration. Other bookish thing that I want to talk about, the Goodreads Choice Awards. Now, as I've said before, I don't really take them seriously at all. I don't get upset about pretty much anything with them. I'm just like, whatever. They're just a fun thing. Except this year. This year, if you have seen some of my past videos, I was a little bit angry about the best debut category because in the best debut category, there's a book, which I have not read. So this is not at all a critique on the book. The book, The Wishing Game by Meg Shaffer was nominated. That's not a debut novel. Meg Shaffer is the pen name of Tiffany Rice, who's written many other books. And I was very upset that Tiffany Rice, to her credit, it's been very open that she is this person. This is not a surprise. She will readily admit that she is Meg Shaffer, and Meg Shaffer is not a debut author. So when it was, first was on the first round, I was like, oh, they didn't catch that. And then it made the finals. I was like upset. So I didn't care about any of the other winners but I went to check best debut and it didn't win. I was like, good. And it won Wayward One, which I've heard is a really good book. Again, haven't read it. This is not about the books themselves. But then I noticed that The Wishing Game isn't even listed on there. And then I looked. The Wishing Game came in 3rd for best novel. And it got like 57,000 votes. But Wayward, which won the best debut, got like 40,000 votes in that category. So I have a theory that The Wishing Game actually won that stupid category that should never have been nominated in. And Goodreads, for whatever reason, first of all, did not do their due diligence to begin with. And then either they tried to make safe by just pretending it never happened, or Tiffany Rice turned the award down, which my guess is she probably would have if it had been presented to her, because she's not a debut author. So anyway, that's my little like scandalous thing. Again, I don't really care that much about the Goodreads Choice Awards. I think they're fun. I vote them every year. I sometimes use them to get book recommendations, but I do think that a debut category, it is very important that it is debut authors that are in that category, because that's something they need to really help their career. And to give it to someone who has written dozens of other books is not cool. Again, I think I'm putting the blame on this completely on Goodreads / Amazon, because it's not the fault of the author. Just, there you go. My friend says I'm getting too wrapped up in this, so I'm going to leave it there, but there you go. That's my little rant about the Goodreads Choice Awards. I did see Yellowface one, which I kind of laughed about because I had just recently read it and it wasn't a book that worked for me. Although I can see why it would win. I mean, as I said in that, the reason I didn't like Yellowface was a pet peeve issue. It wasn't, I do see the quality of the book. It just was a book that didn't work for me. So, what else? I mentioned last week I started PT, or I went to PT. I went to PT. We tried to figure out what was wrong with my leg. Realized it was actually my back, even though my back didn't hurt. He says it's sciatica. So I've had sciatica before, and it didn't feel at all like sciatica, but he says it is. So, I have stretches to do, and I unfortunately will have to sit, for periods of time with a heating pad on my back. There's really nothing I can do during that time except to read. So, hey, just gonna have to suffer through that. Oh, well. In any case, my leg is starting to feel a little bit better. So hopefully this will, he says it takes about 2 weeks. So hopefully I will be, by Christmas, I will be somewhat new and improved, or at least close to where I was before. Anyway, let's talk about my reading for last week. So my reading for last week, I need to get to my right thing here. This is the wrong file. I finished, sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Let me get right there. I finished 4 books last week. However, 2 of them I had been reading for a very, very long time. But the first one I finished was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which I read for the FOMO book club. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I thought it was really slow to begin with. It didn't pull me in right away, but at some point around the 35-40% mark, I was sucked in, and I don't know what it was that sucked me in. Does that make any sense? I just realized I was all of a sudden into this book. I gave it an A. I enjoyed it. Didn't necessarily enjoy the experience of reading it, though, because Overdrive, Libby, Kobo, them all together did me wrong. And for some reason, I was reading it on my Kobo, and then I did a sync, and it took it off my Kobo and just gave me a preview, and I couldn't get the full book back again, even though I still had it checked out from the library. So I had to read it on my phone, which is not my preferred way to read books lots of times, although I'm currently reading one on my phone. But that was not an enjoyable experience. Obviously not the fault of the book. I'm sorry, the garbage truck is outside. That's the problem with doing these on Friday mornings. It's garbage truck time. So the next book I finished, I'm probably going to talk about this one a little bit, is Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation by Kristin Kobes-Dumez. So this was my fraud pick for Nonfiction November. And yes, I finished it in December. As I said, when I think of fraud, I think of someone in particular, and I didn't want to read about that particular person because I don't like that particular person. So I read what led up to that particular person just being there. You know what I'm talking about. So this is a lot about the political evangelical movement. And I do want to, before I go any further, I want to use a little clarification on terms. When I'm going to say evangelical, talking about this going forward, I am meaning the people who are, small group of people who are like church leaders in sort of conservative American Christianity. I'm saying those organizations and the people who lead them. Now, I went to school in Virginia. I went to William & Mary, which is not a religious school, but it had a large evangelical, we're going to say little small e, evangelical student body. And I had friends who are evangelical, and they are good people. They are very good people. I may not agree with them on things, but they are good people. There's not malice in their hearts. And so, I want to make sure that you know who I'm talking about when I talk about this. I know a lot of those people I don't agree with politically, but I will get to that in a second. But we're going to talk about the big E evangelical, the people who are in charge. So these people are not Christian. They say they're Christian. They're not. I mean, they don't like the teachings of Jesus. They use a word to describe Jesus that I can't say on here because I will get a mark on me by YouTube. But think of like what sometimes people call a cat. Yeah, that's what they think of Jesus. So they use sort of a John Wayne manly man Jesus, which is not at all biblical. It's not. And they attribute a lot of things to this myth of Jesus that they have created in their own minds, which are not based in the Bible. They also, and I will say this because I have talked to, this was not addressed in the book, but it is something that I have heard evangelical people tell me is they find these reasons to discount what Jesus says in the gospel and say what you really need to read, what you really need to follow is what Paul says in the epistles. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Christian Bible, in the New Testament, you have the Gospels, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then you have the Acts of the Apostles, which isn't a gospel, but it's like a gospel. It talks about like what happened after Jesus was resurrected. And at the end, you have the book of Revelation, which is weird. I mean, that's a whole other thing. And all of those books, all of those books in the New Testament were written for general consumption. They were recorded and written down to spread the word, for everyone to read. Now, after Acts of the Apostles and before the book of Revelation, you have these shorter books called the epistles, which are letters that some of which were written by the Apostle Paul, some were written by people in the name of Paul, some were written by other people, some we don't know who wrote them. There's a whole bunch of other things. But the thing about these letters is they were written to very specific groups of people for very specific purposes at very specific times. They were not written for a wide consumption. That's not to say that's not to say there's no value in them. There is, but you cannot read them without a historical and cultural context. You can't. You just can't. That's how you get really bad Christian theology. That's how you get evangelicalism is what it is. So they they discount the thing you're supposed to take and take the thing you're not supposed to. And that's where they come up with. So I have said for a while that, again, big E evangelicals are not Christian. They aren't. There's like not even faith involved in this. It is not a religious movement. It's a political movement. Now, what I was looking for in this book was why people voted for this person I don't want to talk about. And what they talk a little bit about this in the book, but the big E evangelicals have fostered a system, have fostered a world in which their followers take whatever they say without question. And so they're saying these things they know are wrong. They know are not biblical. And they know that they're just doing it for their own, to put that out. And they, for their own, their own goals and political goals. And it trickles down through the big churches, the little churches, to the congregants, and so then they start taking it. That's I wanted an exploration of that in the book. Instead, I got mostly an exploration of like the big E evangelicals. And there wasn't really anything new in there, although I had to put the book down several times because I was just angry. Really angry that these people have this power. I was angry on two sides. Like I was angry on the political side because what they're doing is not democratic. It's anti-American. It's anti-American. But also on the religious side, it's also anti-Christian. And they're holding themselves up as paragons of both. And they are actually the antithesis of both. So I got very angry several times and had to put the book down. I ended up giving the book a B. I had to separate my feelings because it not being what I wanted isn't really its fault. I did feel organizationally, it could have been improved with organization. Sometimes I felt like there was so much information, I felt it could have been streamlined a bit better. So I did feel that. And then it's down, I mean, the whole book is like a downer until like the last sentence where she gives you this sort of like, but you know, things can be changed. If you're going to be down the whole time, be down the whole time. Don't give me a little crumb at the end. Give me some action to kind of like make me feel better about this, because I did not feel good about this going forward. So those are my feelings on that. Again, my anger is directed towards that upper echelon, the decision makers, the ones who not, you know, yes, I am angry at the way some people voted, because they did vote actively against their own interests and actively against their own beliefs, which I don't understand, but I see how it kind of went down because there are people in charge who are not acting in their best interest. So that was that one. Okay. Then I finished a short story collection. I finished A Deadly Affair. Honestly, I only read the stories in here I hadn't previously read, so I didn't actually read this entire book, but it was in my rotation, which is now down to 2 books, which I have to finish before the end of the year. So I'm not adding any more short story collections until I finish those. But I enjoyed this one. I mean, it's a little iffy because this is like, it sounds like, oh, it's like Agatha Christie love stories. There's not really a love story in this. They're all but of the ones I read, all but one were murder mysteries. Now, there was one that I really enjoyed in here called Magnolia Blossom, which I have not read yet, the Mary Westmacotts. But after, I suspected this was like a Mary Westmacott story. And then after I read it, I listened to the All About Agatha episode on it. They did a Patreon episode on it. And they said, yeah, this is like a Mary Westmacott. But this was a beautifully written, like just a human story. And I really enjoyed it. And I wish that more people knew about, because yes, a lot of these there's a lot of Tommy and Tuppence in this book, which makes sense. But not everybody likes Tommy and Tuppence, so that's my warning about it. But Magnolia Blossom was just so different that I would highly recommend that just in general as a short story. I mean, the other ones are fine, but they're Agatha Christie's. You know, a lot of them follow, there's some Poirot's and some Marples and Harley Quinn's and Tommy and Tuppence and Parker Pines in here. So there's a bunch in here. If you like Agatha Christie, this is great. It's a nice little collection. And then I finished for my book club on tomorrow, or today when you see this, it'll be Saturday. What Strange Paradise by Omar Akkad. Now, I've had this book on my shelves for a while, and I don't know where I got it, but it's autographed. I have no clue how this came into my life, but I finally read it. Omar Akkad is, I believe he is of Syrian descent, which makes sense because this does deal with Syrian refugees. He is Canadian, but he lives here in the Portland area. So we hear a lot about him here. This was a really heartbreaking book about, so there's a boat of refugees. Something happens. They all wash up on this island. This island is never told where it is, which after you read the book, you kind of understand why. And everyone's dead except for this little boy. And this little boy kind of runs off and he finds this teenage girl, and this teenage girl is going to help him. And there's, you know, someone who's after him. And I can't go any further because it would be a huge spoiler for to go any further. But I really enjoyed this book. I am still thinking about it. I did have a few complaints that, again, would be kind of spoilery to go into. So I won't, if anyone's read this book and wants to talk about it, you can, my contact information is down below and I'm happy to talk to you about it. But I would recommend this book. I gave this book an A, and I'm looking forward to discussing it tomorrow night with my book club. So, What Strange Paradise by Omar Akkad. Okay, now, for what I am currently reading, that is the wrong list. Hold on one second. I forgot to get my books. Okay, I'm back. I always think I'm organized and then I'm not. I have 2 print books going. I have 2 print books going, 4 ebooks and an audiobook, and I'm not including the short story collections that I have going. I'll talk about those as I finish them. So the first book I have going is The Friend by Sigrid Nunez. I've never read Sigrid Nunez before. This won the National Book Award. I've never heard of it before, and I'm not far into it. Like, I'm just a little bit in. I just started it last night, and it's about a woman, as far as I can tell, like a woman whose male friend, I mean, they are not romantically involved. They are just friends, but he committed suicide and she's dealing with it. That's what's happened 22 pages into the book. So I think there's a dog because there's a dog. I can't say much more about this book right now, but I do think I will like it. I will say it's a small book, but it's not a quick book, if that makes sense. And then the other print book I have going is one of the ones that I said I had to finish by December 31st, 2024, or just get rid of. And it's one that I'm doing as a buddy read on my Discord. Feel free to join us. And that is Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk by Kathleen Rooney. I'm really enjoying this book. So Lillian Boxfish is 80, depends if she tells the truth or not, 84 or 85 years old. And it is New Year's Eve going from 84 to 85. 1984 to 1985. And she's just walking through. She lives in a part of New York City. I think it's Manhattan. It's either Manhattan or Brooklyn that she lives in, but it's Murray Hill. I am not super familiar with the neighborhoods in New York City. I'm a West Coaster. But she's kind of like walking through the city and just reminiscing on her life. So you have a dual timeline-ish. You have the current day, which is New Year's Eve, 1984, 1985. And then you have all the times in her life. Now that second part is not told linearly. So you're bouncing back and forth, which I thought would be annoying, but is really working well. And Lillian is such a fantastic character. Oh, so fantastic. She's like, this was a detail that just got me. She's 84 and 85 years old, and depending, she's telling the truth or not. And she mentions that there's this new music called rap, and she really likes it. And there's these people dancing. They call it break dancing. She thinks that's awesome. And I was like, I like this woman. Not that I like rap music or break dancing, but I like this woman. The other thing, this also puts two other things kind of in mind for me as I'm reading it. One is When Harry Met Sally, because When Harry Met Sally is such a New York story. And that movie came out in 1989, so we're dealing at about the same time. And obviously, it's easier in a movie to capture a sense of place because you're filming it. But this fits in well. Like what I see, this also feels like the same New York. The other thing that this reminds me of quite a bit is the books of Fiona Davis. Now, you've heard my Fiona Davis thing. I think Fiona Davis is a great writer and everyone should read a couple of her books. But once you get past a couple, you realize they're just the same book told over and over again. But if you have read some of her books, or if you haven't, please do. You would probably like this book because Fiona Davis always takes like a building in New York and tells a story about it, but has a dual timeline. This one is pretty much the whole city. I'm a little over halfway. I'm really enjoying this one, so highly recommend it so far. And you can still join us on the Buddy Read Discord down below. And now ebook. I have 4 ebooks going. There's a reason why I have 4 ebooks going. The first one is Villette by Charlotte Brontë, which is a reread for me. I'm rereading this as part of Remember December. This is the book that I do not remember reading. And that is true because I don't remember a darn thing about this book. I know I read it because I have my paperback copy from college and I have notes all the way through it. So I know I read it. It was completely new to me though, this story. I was going to do, and I started to do like a vlog of reading it, but I decided not to do it. I will say, these are my thoughts on it going in. One, I do feel this is a step down from from Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. While I don't remember this book, I also don't remember Shirley or the Professor, but I remember Jane Eyre perfectly. Of course, I've read Jane Eyre several times since college. But I do have this like thought came into my head that I remember having when I was reading these in college, was that Jane Eyre is a fluke, Charlotte Brontë is overrated, and Anne Brontë is where it's at. And as I read this, and I do actually plan to reread Shirley and the Professor as well, but as I read this, Villette, I'm starting to think I was right back when I had this thought. It's not that Villette is bad. To be fair, I'm comparing it to Jane Eyre, which is fantastic. There are definitely some similarities. So the heroine of Villette is a woman named Lucy Snow, who's sort of this, she's kind of a wallflower, one of those people that is overlooked. And she ends up going to this town on the continent. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be in France or Belgium. I think it might be in Belgium, a town called Villette, where she works in a school. Plot ensues. So it is actually, there are definite autobiographical traits in it, as there were in Jane Eyre. But Charlotte Brontë, so there's a character in this book, Madame Beck, and Madame Beck is the woman who owns this school, and she's not portrayed in a very good light. So if we go back to Charlotte Bronte's own life, she did go to school in Belgium, and at the school she went to, she had a big crush on the headmaster. Literary historians have gone through it. It's pretty clear that this was a one-way crush. There was nothing going on between them. She had a crush. But because she had such a crush on this man, she really didn't like his wife. And his wife shows up in her books in not great lights. And so Madame Beck is based on his wife. Charlotte Brontë was many things, and petty is among them. So, those are things that we expect to see. It starts very strangely, and I'm expecting these characters to come back, but it starts when Lucy is younger and she's with her godmother, and her godmother takes in this child named Polly, and this is a weird kid. They say she's 6 years old, but it seems more like she's 16, but only 18 inches tall. And she's kind of in the 70s. Remember when the special effects was the split screen and it looked really bad? That's what I felt like reading it. So there's this thing where Polly likes her, the godmother's older son, and then they just go away and they're not mentioned again so far. So I am completely expecting them to show up at some point again in the future. But I would say it's definitely a step or two down from Jane Eyre, at least so far. But I'm enjoying it for no other reason than being surprised that I don't remember any of those. So there you go. That's what's going on with Villette. And I'm reading a certain amount each day to kind of pace myself through the month. So it's not like a main read for me. The next ebook I have is The White Lady by Jaqueline Winspear. So Winspear wrote the Maisie Dobbs series, which I own the first one if I've never read. But this one is the start of a new series, and I got it from the library. And I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a dual timeline. The main character is Eleanor White or Eleanor DeWitt. It's the same person. So during World War I, she lived in Belgium. And she and her mother and her sister were spies. And she's young, 12 at this time. They did some espionage work. Jump ahead to 1947. We're past World War II, and she's definitely has a history doing something with Scotland Yard. But she's been given, I can't remember the name of the term, but something like some kind of house that the government gave her kind of as a thanks. There's a term, and I can't remember the name of it, and it's on my ebook, so it's hard to look up. But she's given that, and then she meets these neighbors who clearly there's something going on. They're in some kind of trouble. And so she wants to go protect these neighbors. So she goes down to London and she gets involved in Scotland Yard again. I'm really enjoying it. I really like the main character. So this is the book that I read in the 45 minutes I'm sitting in my car in front of the high school. I get there that early so that I can get out of there quickly. Otherwise I'm stuck there for a long time when my daughter gets out. So that's just life. Mother of a high school student. But I am really enjoying The White Lady. And then I have two Christmas ones. One, the first one I think I mentioned last week, which was The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. I'm reading this through serial, so I get a little bit each day. It's delightful. It definitely reminds me more of Dr. Seuss than The Wizard of Oz, if that makes any sense. If you were to read it, I'm reading it, and in my mind I'm seeing Dr. Seuss illustrations. But it's delightful, and I may go and just start it again from the beginning and read it to my kids just as a Christmas thing, because it is a nice little Christmas story. And then last night I started The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. This is actually a NetGalley book for me. As I said, I have a bunch of NetGalley books that I'm just going to get to at my own time. I'm not that far into it, so I can't say much about it. I'm not sure this one's going to work especially well for me. A lot of it is told through diary entries so far, which is fine, but it's the diary entries of a college-aged girl, and it's not reading very realistically to me. But we'll see how it goes. I think I'm 17% into it. So that means I've read 17 pages. I can't say that much about it. Finally, my ebook. Still listening to my re-listen, which is part of Remember of December, and this is like reread something in a different form. I am listening to The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie, narrated by Hugh Fraser. The narration is fantastic in this. Fantastic. Now, I'm kind of on record by saying I am not a Hastings fan. I don't like the character. I just don't. I like him better in sort of the later mysteries when he's more of just a narrator, but when he's more of a character in the book, I tend not to like him very much because I think he's kind of an idiot. But Hugh Fraser, if you don't know, played Hastings in the Poirot series. And so when he's narrating and he's talking about Hastings, it is actually Hastings talking, which is fantastic. But he also does the other voices, including Poirot's, really well. So I am really enjoying the narration of this. So much so that I used my Libra credit this month to get Murder on the Links, which is the next Agatha Christie book, also narrated by Hugh Fraser. So there we go. That is my reading week and what is going on in my world this week. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Oh, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Join my Discord. See you. Everything's down below. See you next time. Thank you.